Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass with JayBee, Milly, and Smash!
Hi everyone, welcome to another video on the JayBee
Hello.
and Milly channel. Today we are joined by Smash.
Hello.
Rhianna.
Hi.
And we have the absolute pleasure of being able to speak with Jon Colton Barry. Now, we are particularly excited to be speaking with them in regards to the Be Cool series in that they were the head writer.
Hi guys, really good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to get into these questions. The first kind of segment of questions that we have here are a bit about your career and background. And so the first question I'd like to ask you is, what was your introduction to writing in general or teleplay?
Well, in the early days, right out of college, I was really focused on music and songwriting, actually being in bands, sort of fun and adventure you kind of want to have at that age. But all during that period, I also worked as a creative consultant, including script doctoring and editing and all this sort of stuff. So that was really my first introduction to writing for television, although my first job sort of staff writing on a television show was Phineas and Ferb in 2006, which couldn't have been a more ideal first experience in television.
That's amazing. And Phineas and Ferb was something that I think it's fair to say that I know I particularly enjoyed growing up. I was very much a Disney Channel kind of fan, and Phineas and Ferb are just two incredible characters. Would you say that prior to doing that, there was anybody that you looked up to as a writer?
Oh, absolutely. I was raised in a very creative family. A lot of comedy, a lot of laughter, and so growing up, I was introduced to and raised on a bunch of comedy specifically that was probably sort of before my time, but was pervasive in my childhood as much as, if not more so, than Saturday morning cartoons, and that would include the Marx Brothers and Monty Python, very early Woody Allen films, and specifically Gene Wilder's work in very early Mel Brooks films. Those four really sort of just stuck with me and got in my blood, and to me very obviously have influenced sort of where I'm coming from as a comedy writer.
Nice, that's exciting. So we mentioned Phineas and Ferb already, but within that particular show, did you have any character or characters that stood out to you that you love to write for? Yeah.
I mean, Heinz Doofenshmirtz, definitely. When I first got there, I'm very much into dimensionalizing animated characters and even trying to give them more natural ways of speaking, where they might interrupt their own sentences and change directions midway or pause to gather their thoughts. I just love when you can feel a character thinking, either mind working. It just humanizes them and makes them more relatable to me. And Heinz Doofenshmirtz was a character that my friend Dan Povenmire, who created the show, he also did the voice for that. And he's the one who had seen a very, very silly stage comedy I had written and said, ooh, I want that for the Phineas and Ferb, that sort of tone and comedy. So the first thing I brought into Phineas was this idea of Doofenshmirtz's evil schemes being motivated by these endless series of tragic childhood incidents.
Right.
And Dan absolutely just got it. And the collaboration was wonderful. Doofenshmirtz was really the great lab experiment in pushing the boundaries of all the stuff I was interested in. And I think Dan should have just a pile of Emmys for performing Doofenshmirtz personally, but I just thought he was brilliant.
Yeah, there's so many old episodes with them that I absolutely love, like the episode with Peter the Panda, and then that song about him and when he gets his love interest was stuck in my head for it still is stuck in my head, so that's absolutely incredible to get some backstory about that.
Oh, you're talking about the evil love song. The evil happy
an evil boy meets an evil girl.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I'm so glad it lives on.
Oh, God.
So sticking on the whole Phineas and Ferb thing, it's very much a show that it really does have no limits to the things that the brothers create and even the experiments that Doofenshmirtz himself does. So did you find that there were any challenges while you were writing Phineas and Ferb because of there being no limits, or did you just come up with an idea and just throw everything at it?
Interesting. I mean, yes, when you are dealing with a show that seemingly has no limits, it's really your own limits that you're going to be bumping up against. And that was always the challenge. And it remains, I think, the challenge in any show is keeping it fresh, keeping it interesting, is finding, if there are actually any limits, exploring that. And Phineas and Ferb did that really, really well. My main creative partner on that show, Piero Paluzzo, was very like-minded in that way. And we approached every episode very, very fresh. What can we do now that's going to make us and the audience see the show new, with new eyes, and open up the storytelling potential for everyone working on the show even more. That's always the goal and always the challenge.
See, I think Phineas and Ferb, like, kind of bringing in Scooby as well here, I guess. For Scooby, it's one plot, whereas I feel like for Phineas and Ferb, you have to have two kind of outrageous plots, one for Phineas and Ferb, and then one for Doctor Doofenshmirtz as well. So it's like double. And
I guess
the
Candace as well
requirement.
kind of has
Yeah,
that
there's
story
actually
arc as
three.
well.
Candace,
Yeah, you said Candace, didn't you?
Yeah. It was like the Seinfeld series in that way, where you had the three different plots and then they dovetail in the end. So that was always, a fun challenge was the formula of the show and trying to come at the formula in different ways every time. Restrictions are always good as much as limitlessness.
So I guess like Millie was mentioning, that kind of brings us on to Scooby Doo and kind of the whole Be Cool series. And I was curious to know that when watching it, it seemed very, I don't know, it seemed like if the original show had come out at the time, but all fresh as well. Like, it was so inspired by the classics, but also so rich in brand new storytelling and everything. So I was kind of curious to get your background on Scooby Doo in general, like if you watched it growing up or anything at all.
I did. I mean, Scooby Doo was always around, and I liked it. It's sort of, I'm always reminded of J.J. Abrams' first Star Trek movie. I remember hearing an interview with him at the time where he was saying, like, yeah, I had watched Star Trek and I liked Star Trek, but I wasn't really fanatical about it, which I think allowed him to not be too precious with it. It allowed him to sort of follow where the ideas led him. And that's very much me with Scooby Doo. It continues to be part of the fabric of popular culture even to today. You can't escape Scooby Doo. So it's, coming at it new is always going to be a challenge and a fun thing for everyone. I mean, since 1969, it's been going on. Scooby Doo was always there.
Has there been any kind of like newer shows or newer movies or even older movies that you've watched and found that you particularly enjoyed?
Scooby Doo related, you mean?
Yeah.
The original Scooby Doo, Where Are You? Nothing really tops that to me. Everything that came after was really sort of variations on the idea and the themes. So in that respect, it's almost unfair to compare them to the original, because there was nothingness before that, this void. And then out of nothing, suddenly the world's given this idea. 4 teenagers and a talking dog, drive around in a garish van and solve, simplistically overly complicated mysteries perpetrated by a greedy adult in a monster mask. It's like, wow, okay. I think we're still trying to wrap our heads around that original concept, But yeah, it didn't exist before then. It suddenly existed. So Scooby Doo, Where Are You? Remains to me the big one.
I really like.
And I'm sorry, we were very, very, that was the main touch point for us on Be Cool Scooby Doo, which you had mentioned. Yeah.
I really like the point you made about enjoying the series, but not holding it too closely that it had to be an exact replica of what was before, because I think Be Cool was kind of integral in progressing Scooby forward and almost modernizing it in a way that we hadn't fully seen done before. It really helped to bring it forward. So I think it was such a good approach to be at when you were introduced to writing for Scooby. But how did writing for Scooby come about?
Zach Moncrief, who became a really close dear friend of mine on Phineas and Ferb. He was a director and a writer on it, and he moved over to Warner Brothers after Phineas, and they had, Phineas was very popular at the time, and Warner Brothers had just done Mystery Incorporated. It was the previous Scooby-Doo iteration, and they wanted to go sort of in the opposite direction, tonally, into a very unabashedly comedic version. And Zach was over there, so they said, hey, would you be interested in doing sort of the Phineas and Ferb version of Scooby-Doo? And they literally said that, for shorthand for, we want a silly, very, just, it's a comedy. And he said, yeah, let's do that. And we should call Jon, who, I guess he liked my approach to, shows and how I think about characters, stuff like that. He thought it might be useful. So they brought me in. I was thrilled to do it.
That's amazing. And in terms of starting writing for Scooby, did you revisit any of the old kind of Scooby episodes, or was there any series that you found helped inspire you, or did you just kind of go into it with the mindset of what you'd seen, like you said, from the very start of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You, and then taking that Phineas and Ferb vibe that they said they were looking for?
We certainly started out, we began with the intention of watching almost all of Scooby-Doo, just to sort of get an idea of what has been done, and very, very quickly found, discovered that 90%, at least in the television series, 90% of them aren't what people normally picture for what the paradigm of Scooby-Doo is, which is sort of what I had said earlier. It's, Fred, Daphne, Velma, Scooby, and Shaggy driving around in the Mystery Machine solving mysteries. Very few of the series are actually that. They throw out some characters, bring in new, so we understood that we were doing something pretty radical. It was going to be startling what we were doing. So we felt, to mitigate that, the things that we were really excited about and interested in, we needed to ground all that in something almost blatantly conservative. So we went back to Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? and decided, well, what if we were given that brief now? If someone just said, hey, we want you to do 4 teenagers and a talking dog in a van solving mysteries, how would you do that? So that's what Be Cool Scooby Doo became, is how Zach and I would do Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?
Nice. That's so fun. And kind of bouncing off of Milly's question, did you have any goals or changes? I mean, I think you kind of already touched on this, but goals or changes for even just the characters or anything within this series?
Yeah, when Zach and I both got there, there had been previously, Warner Brothers had decided, once Mystery Incorporated ended, it got a couple seasons like almost every Scooby-Doo show, and did have a very rabid and loyal fan base. But then a lot of people were a little unsure about it. But it was tonally very gritty and dark and stuff like that. The biggest the biggest thing that we noticed right away was why Fred, Daphne, and Velma got so sort of shortchanged through the Scooby-Doo series. They would be taken out. It was almost as if they didn't really matter. The idea of what defines a Scooby-Doo show, began to be into question, and now that there's, movies with just Velma and Daphne, it seems to be today, Scooby-Doo is sort of defined by one or more of those original 5 characters. It doesn't even need Scooby-Doo in it necessarily. and some mystery element, you know. And I've been, you know, I've actually been in rooms where people have said, oh, well, no one really cares about Fred, Daphne, and Velma, so how do we get rid of them? And that has been, I think, a problem for people doing Scooby-Doo all along. And I thought our you know, solution for that was pretty great and kind of surprising that no one had done it before, which was make them likable, make them characters that we care about by giving them personalities. You know, they're just basically sort of cardboard, one-dimensional personalities in the beginning. You know, Fred is the leader, Daphne is the pretty one, danger prone, you know, but being clumsy isn't really a personality. You know, Velma had glasses, but even in the original, was she really brainy? Not necessarily, you know. They didn't really have distinct personalities. And so that's what we decided to do, was create a comedic ensemble and give them all very distinct, clean, you know, personalities that would bounce off each other really, really well and give us the comedy that we needed.
That is amazing.
That was the main goal.
Like, especially with Velma, I think, because normally I'm a bit like hot and cold about Velma, but in Be Cool especially, I think it's like my favorite iteration of Velma, especially in that debut episode at Elias Kingston University, where it's like it's showing her how she's like analyzing the library. It's very almost a little bit like the BBC Sherlock series, and I just think that was such a cool take on Velma.
For me, I'd say it was Daphne in this series that was the main
Daphne's
kind of
always
standout
amazing.
personality, because I feel like the one thing that
the
Scooby
puppets.
did before was quite a lot of the time it was like the mystery's everything. It's almost like they're robots, nothing but the mystery matters. And then with this one, it was almost more human in that even though there's a mystery going on, she was interested in puppets. So the second you saw something that was a puppet, like a normal human with an interest, there was something that existed outside of the mystery, and that could sit and that could wait for a couple of minutes. Like, you know, it wasn't gonna be some huge drama if the mystery had to be abandoned for all of 30 seconds so that she could go and look at some puppets. And I think there's almost some value to, and like almost a little bit of, I want to say like a satirical value as well to it, when like sometimes they like drag her back, kind of like, okay, that's because it's almost breaking formula for them, so it's like, oh, come back, but it's also done really nicely and it's really fun to see.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you guys enjoyed it. We were you know, we did not give ourselves a very easy task there, because there is so much to service in a Scooby-Doo episode with simply the mystery and the suspects, and when you now have to deal with 5 characters that you have to service, there was a lot to deal with in each episode, and we wanted to make sure that the characters were constant, you know, that the characters were driving the story, you know. And to do that, what we did was, like in the Elias Kingston one, we tied Velma, her personal life, to the mystery itself. So if we gave the character stakes in solving the mystery, and that kept them all plugged in to solving the mystery in a very unique way, and kept it very human and organic. You know, to the point where I personally think we could have done a non-mystery episode or a very different sort of episode, because the characters themselves were carrying the show. You know?
I definitely think, like, in this series, for the characters of Mystery Inc., I was actually more excited to see than, like, say, the monster of the week, because in the other series it's like, ooh, what are they going to come up with the monster this time or whatever. But for this series, it was like, you know, what's Daphne's shtick this time? What's Fred going to be annoyed about or something? You know, it was like the characters were the best part of this series rather than the monster or the mystery. And so was there a particular member of Mystery Inc. that you were drawn to write for? We started out with, we knew we couldn't really mess with Shaggy and Scooby too much, you know, and they were basically fine how they were. They had very
specific points of views as characters, and we all knew they were terrified and hungry. Matthew Lillard, who voiced Shaggy, he played Shaggy in the live action movies. Very, very early on, I was sort of bemoaning to him this line I had written for Shaggy. I think it was in the pilot even, that they said, it's too smart for Shaggy. And I said, no, our Shaggy isn't stupid. He's terrified. But I wanted to sort of Groucho Marx him up a little bit, make him a little sharper and wittier and funnier than he had been. And this one particular line, Matthew was like, yeah, it's good, but I get their fear, because to him, Shaggy and Scooby are the way that littler kids enter the show. They can relate to being hungry, being afraid, sort of the id aspect of Shaggy and Scooby. And so we didn't want to mess with them too much. And so we started with Fred as the cornerstone character. He's going to be the leader. And, I mentioned Gene Wilder earlier. Young Frankenstein was really one of the models for our Fred. That this character in Young Frankenstein that Gene Wilder played, he was a descendant of the original Dr. Frankenstein, who created the original Frankenstein monster. And he can't live down his name. He calls himself Frankenstein. He wants to be taken seriously. He wants to, and he's always very insecure about it and trying to get control. And we sort of gave that sort of control freakness to Fred. And I was sort of picturing that Gene Wilder, when I was writing the dialogue, I was even picturing it. And then through the alchemy of animation and Frank Welker doing the voice, what came out was our unique Fred, and then we sort of moved over to Daphne and like, all right, well, if he's a control freak, what's going to really annoy him? How can we get the comedy going? And we're like, well, let's get someone who's a little out of control, and with Daphne, we just wanted to get away from the pretty one idea, any sort of superficial sort of female-y trope stuff where you could describe our Daphne's personality. And gender simply isn't an issue. It doesn't matter. You wouldn't know from the description whether it's a man or a woman. And I love that about our Daphne. I felt that she, if she was attractive or what, it just wasn't something she traded on or used or was aware or cared about. We had a couple times where a character might compliment her, and she always sort of like, in the murder mystery episode. Bradford Bradwick, I think, he says, "Oh, Daphne, you look stunning," and she goes, "That's me, set for stunning." She just sort of deflects it, and I really love that. And so, to answer your question, finally, Daphne was at first the one that we were really excited about, and we remained really excited about her. She was always so much fun to write. As the series progressed, my attention turned more to Fred, and I began having a lot of fun with Fred. And I think you see it sort of in the second season, a lot of Fred-centric episodes. And it just sort of opened up and became just sort of organically that. But yeah, Daphne and Fred ended up being, my favorites and a lot of fans' favorites. And who would have ever guessed Daphne and Fred would be the favorites on a Scooby-Doo show?
Right. Thank you. I'll be right back, but y'all keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have that effect on people.
It's as you say, there was kind of almost I don't want to call it a misconception before, but very much like Fred and Daphne and Velma were almost the disposable characters. And it's funny you mentioned that, going back through the whole entire kind of back catalogue of series, that very few of them had the full gang, and I'd never actually realised that before. But that is a very good point, because sometimes they'd just have, Scooby, Shaggy, Daphne, and then they'd bring, say, Scrappy into the mix, and all different types of side characters that they had going on. But I didn't realise how few of them actually had everyone there, so I'm going to be second guessing my memory of it there.
But I think you're... Sorry.
I'm talking really bad. Oh, right.
I was just going to say, I think that you're very right in what you're saying, that Scooby's becoming an era now that, like... It's almost reversing that there is an existence without, say, Shaggy and Scooby. Like you're saying, the Daphne and Velma movie, there's no mention of the other three. There's a book series, and in that, there's no mystery. It's called Daphne and Velma. Shaggy and Fred get slight mentions, but Scooby's not a talking dog. There's no mystery machine. It's evolving in the other direction, and I do think that Be Cool was really integral in doing that.
I'm not really sure what the legacy and impact of Be Cool Scooby Doo will end up being. Probably not very huge. Although I still think that the idea of giving the other three characters more meat on their bones and giving them more distinct personalities is a really good idea, no matter what tone you're doing. If you're doing gritty adult scary one, it should have that as well, and so I hope at least that idea bleeds into the future of Scooby-Doo, because it's probably a valuable one for Scooby-Doo.
Definitely. And I just want to say, my whole family, my mum, my sister, my brother, and myself, we were huge fans of Phineas and Ferb. And as soon as, especially my brother and I, we were in the middle of binge watching as many episodes as possible each day of Phineas and Ferb when we found out about Be Cool and that you were writing it. And we just turned to each other and we were like, I can't wait to see what you do with the characters and how you develop them, because I feel like you've kind of created an all-round team that each one could have their own standalone show. And it's so amazing to hear all of the process behind it. And I also just want to quickly apologize if you can hear my dog whining in the background. She wants to come in, I think.
Oh, let her in.
No, but I think Rhianna's got it spot on there, because the thing about Phineas and Ferb is there's always that kind of consistent quote, aren't you two a bit too young for this? Well, yes, we are. And I think that's kind of a mantra that's been carried forward into Be Cool, like, Daphne, aren't you two kind of accident prone to do this? Well, I might be a bit of that, but I'm also so much more. So I think that's definitely something that I absolutely love about your writing style, that it goes beyond just subverting expectations, but it's also about expanding on why certain things are how they are, but also doing it in such a funny way as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I can be a little compulsive about callbacks and keeping lots of balls in the air at once as a writer. So everything that has been written like in any specific series is now fair game in the future of that series moving forward, to bring back the ideas or something like that. And it really, to me, is the sign of a healthy show creatively, when the show itself can sort of eat itself and keep growing and growing and growing, fueled by sort of its own nourishment and the world you build in it, that it seems limitless, that the audience feels very much immersed in it. So thank you, and please say hello to the rest of your family for me and thank them for watching.
Yeah, I get that with the writing callback as well, and also the visual callbacks at the same time. I'm just trying to think about it, because it's actually one of my favorite episodes, but visually, if you like keeping an eye, you can notice certain things. Like, it's the episode Me, Myself and AI, and when they go into that kind of matrix, they face Elias Kingston again. And also, throughout the show as well, there's quite a nice callback to the original Where Are You series with their art style, with them kind of briefly transforming into their initial animation styles in the Me, Myself and AI chase sequence. There's the one time where they go into and look at like a funhouse mirror and they say, oh my gosh, thank goodness we don't look like that. So I was wondering, was it always the plan to have the characters look visually so different from their original counterparts, or was that something that kind of happened more behind the scenes?
It was a combination and a number of things. Before Zach and I got there, an art director named Richard Lee was already began the show, but sort of an artist, alone adrift like Robinson Crusoe, drawing increasingly cartoonier versions of his characters, because all he had was, we want to make a really, really silly, funny version of Scooby-Doo, and all he could do with the art was make it sillier and sillier, So when we got there, there were already some early design work and the title "Be Cool Scooby Doo" was there, with one of the ideas floating around being that it almost be sort of a period piece back to the 60s, and the art style touch on the sort of underground comic book, like Robert Crumb, that sort of art style that came out of the 60s. So that was an original idea that sort of fell away, but was our starting point for the designs was the original ones Richard had done, and then Zach began working with them, and we had another character designer come in and begin, because we were, like everyone else who first saw the Be Cool Scooby Doo art went, ah, we had the same reaction when we first saw the art, and I assure everyone who has issue with the art that you should be glad that we pulled it back from where it originally had been. But still, it was an essential part of Be Cool Scooby Doo. An essential part of if the show was going to work or not was that the characters not look like the classic, more realistic style, because we wanted to have the widest tonal range of comedy we can do, from the most base, silly, physical, slapstick, kind of comedy to the most sophisticated verbal sort of plays, that sort of stuff. We wanted to be able to do everything, and the stuff like, in the pilot, in the vending machine, Shaggy and Scooby and Elias Kingston, that scene, if they had been the more realistic looking versions, I think that would have just felt weird. I don't think the comedy would have worked. Like The Simpsons, for instance, is another good example. I've never heard anyone say, wow, what amazing looking characters. We love the aesthetic value. But those characters could make you laugh. They could make you cry. As soon as you just sort of bought them as characters and were into it, how it looked didn't matter. They just were them, and that's what we hoped would happen. And it did, it seemed, happen with the overwhelming majority of people who really gave the show a chance. They saw that, the comedy sort of only works if we pushed the art in a more broad, cartoony sort of way. So I'm not sure how else they really could have looked, or how different it could have looked had we continued, finding and honing the designs even more than where we ended.
1,000,000%. I think it does definitely fit the style. And in terms of yourself and what you like to consume, either now or before, is there a particular art style, it be it like Scooby-Doo or otherwise, that you found that you particularly enjoy watching?
Yeah, I thought the original art for Scooby-Doo was great for that show. I'm always going to be drawn to and attracted to something different and new. With Scooby-Doo, I actually really liked the puppet designs in that little puppet Scooby-Doo thing. I thought the Velma was adorable. The comic book, the Apocalypse that J.M. DeMatteis did, who worked with me on a couple of Be Cool episodes, which was fabulous. I thought that was really cool. I'm always happy when someone tries something, takes a chance with something. Whether it works or not, I think it's always essential that you just try, so art included.
I think there's been so many incredible art styles for Scooby, and quite often with the movies you'll see an art style and it's just there for the titles, and it's almost like I would like to see more done in that art style, just because, like I say, they'll use it for 2 minutes in an opening sequence of a movie and then it's gone, and it's kind of like, oh well, that one's really nice, I want to bring that one back. So there have been a lot of them. In terms of Be Cool, there's been some really great monsters and villains. When you're writing for them, do you tend to think of a story that you want, or the villain, and then make it around the story around the villain?
The stories came up, all sort of different ways. There was no sort of rule to how we did it. A lot of the time it was about the characters, the gang, the main gang, and what do we want to do with them? Again, they were driving the show. in a way that had not really been done in Scooby-Doo before. So we really could be like, oh, you know, we need a Velma-centric episode here. What do we want to see Velma? Once, you know, the personalities were so clear to us that oh, you know, it would be great if Fred has to deal with Daphne doing this, or you know, So a lot of the episodes began with a what do we want to see, you know, for the characters, and then we began the always very laborious process of, okay, all right, now what you know, how do we tell that story? You know, if there's anything obvious in terms of what we're going to do with the characters for the location they are, or the monster, and that's always the two big things for Scooby-Doo is what's the location and what's the monster. And it's almost an impossible task at this point to come up with something original that works and is good and feels like Scooby-Doo. So we gave up very, very, very quickly caring if it had been done before. And I've seen a lot of people just be like, oh, this monster, is that sort of based on that monster? And were you guys calling, you know, and sort of like, no, we just sort of stopped caring and just like, oh, let's do a vampire, let's do a werewolf, let's do, you know, because our show was so different in its tone and its approach that we figured, well, we're going to do everything differently anyway. We're not going to do a vampire like anyone else did it, or you know, whatever it was. So we sort of felt this sort of freedom to just be like, or just gave ourselves the freedom to just say, you know, just stop caring, you know, just do what we feel, you know, would work. And that's how the story came up, just not caring.
That's amazing. And is there a villain or a monster that you would say was your favorite, either because it allowed you to develop a plot line for one of the gang, because there was a reveal that you were particularly happy about, that it had just translated really well aesthetically, or anything like that?
Yeah, you know, there were a couple of I'm sure you guys clocked it as soon as you saw it. There were, you know, like the pilot, some very, very specific callbacks to Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, where we did decide to sort of recontextualize and retell ideas from the episode. Dwayne Capizzi wrote the Where There's a Will, There's a Wraith episode, which was very much exactly us doing the same story as an old Scooby-Doo episode, you know, now, how we would do that. He was very excited to sort of explore that, you know, reinventing the old stories. Elias Kingston was another that we brought back and gave him a new life and a new thing. And those were fun. We didn't do that as much as everyone thought we did. In fact, I think we only did it twice specifically, and then the sea creatures in the boat one, the All Paws on Deck, were visually an homage to sea creatures from a previous Scooby-Doo. You know, we sort of did that a little bit, just lovingly, you know, sort of lean into some past stuff. For the most part, though, we tried to be original, come up with, you know, an original take on a monster or character. We wanted the monsters to be able to be funnier than we actually ended up with them, just because Warner Brothers really felt that they didn't want the monsters to be too silly. They wanted the stakes to feel real, that they were scared. We felt as long as the gang were frightened and the audience believed the gang were frightened, that's all we really needed. We were thinking about the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters. Do you remember that? You know, like, it's as silly and funny as can be, but scary, and the stakes are real. You know, he's going to destroy the New York. But it's also very funny. That's the sort of thing we were going for, and I think we sort of got there with the Court Jester. Was one of my favorites. I liked, you know, having him threaten in sort of the old you know, Shakespearean rhyming sort of thing, and I was very pleased with the what we called the Shaggy and Scooby haircut scene, where they would sort of dress as, you know, barbers or what have you, and just through positive assertion, you know, tell the monster their role in all this, and the monsters just are startled and go along with it for some reason. You know, the Court Jester scene where suddenly they turn him into an auditioning stand-up comedian who fails, and they send him home on the bus, and you see him go home, and he's brushing his teeth, and the music's tragic, and it just goes on, and he's depressed, and then suddenly he realizes they tricked him. That was a really fun one to me, and very definitive of our approach to Be Cool Scooby Doo. So I was pleased with the court jester.
That's amazing.
I love that. So I feel like you've probably already touched on this, but what were some challenges involved with creating a new series? You know, be it there's already 50 years worth of content of Scooby.
Well, I mean, fan expectation, that ended up being the biggest challenge.
Right.
And you know, to me, fear is the great enemy of creativity. You know, all creative choices that are motivated by fear are 9 times out of 10 poor choices. And you cannot pander. You cannot, because, you know, people so righteously, you know, condemn the art style of Be Cool Scooby Doo, you know, and then they have no idea there's this army of people who love it, and they hate Mr. Incorporated, and the Mr. Incorporated, you know, like you can't care. You can't let what you imagine or are afraid the audience wants or expects to influence what you're doing. You just have to do what you think is good and right, and you know, in the end, you know, it'll live or die on its own. I'm happy with the reception Be got, and now I've absolutely forgotten the original question.
I think you answered it either way.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good job. So throughout the series too, there's like a bunch of contemporary technology, which has been slightly done here and there in other iterations and stuff. But was it fun to kind of bring Scooby-Doo more forward? You know, like you were saying, almost remaking, or not remaking, but what would Scooby-Doo Where Are You be if it was made today, you know, but now with all this technology? Was that something fun to do?
Yeah, it was. And it's, you know, the technology is now such a part of our life organically, that we could sort of jump past the pointing arrows at, look kids, they have phones too, you know, like, and just sort of just make it organic. It's just the way, you know, 18-year-olds today what they would do and how they would have it, probably much even less so. You know, we probably have the technology much, you know, more sparingly than would in real life if those, you know, 4 kids and 5, including a dog, you know, had phones. They probably would have been on them much more. They probably would have been researching on them much more. We do have Velma, you know, on her phone quite a bit, you know, researching stuff. But for the most part, you know, I thought we were pretty conservative and good about not overdoing it with the technology, because you also want it to be as timeless as possible. You really don't want to date yourself too much, but you know, like Facebook or, you know, this sort of stuff.
Right.
That's perfect. And I guess that leads us on to the next question, which I'm sure there's so many people that would love to work on either shows that you've written or just work with you personally. I mean, I think it's safe to say all 4 of us are definitely one of them. But did you think that, or like, were there any guest stars that you really felt like you wanted to find a role in the show?
Well, I had the great fortune of working with amazing voice director Colette Sunderman on Be Cool and on my leg on a couple of different shows. And Colette's fantastic, and she and I have spent many an hour talking about just this sort of thing. She always wants to know, you know, of the, you know, secondary characters, you know, is there someone we had in mind? And a lot of times I would have this, you know, well, this is a sort of character that this actor always does really well, you know, even just for sort of defining the character for her so she could picture sort of what I'm going for. And sometimes she would say, well, do you want me to try to get that person? And sometimes she would say, oh, I know a great voice actor who can also do what that person does really well. For instance, what was the in Junkyard episode? We wanted this this character, this dog from Scooby's past, to come back, and he is this sort of cool, badass police cop, in contrast to Scooby's sort of dorky, scaredy cat dog. And I was saying this is the sort of character that someone like Samuel Jackson just does. Like he's that kind of dog. And I don't think we even sure, let's get Samuel Jackson to do the dog on the screen. I don't think we even tried. Occasionally, Colette will be like, yeah, I'll reach out to Tom Hanks. I don't care, and we'll get, no, he said no, but there were, the How to Train Your Coward episode where Shaggy and Scooby quit and get I forget his name. I think Bumpy was the dog. I forget the guy's name, who they got in. I was for some reason picturing the actor David Cross, who did Mr. Show, the sketch comedy with Bob Odenkirk. He was in Arrested Development, and David Cross. I was picturing that's a character he would do really, really well. I don't know if we ever went out to him, but they sort of made it look like him a little bit. So specifically on Scooby-Doo, I would say there was no one I was like, oh, we have to get this person or it won't work. But there were certainly, ideally, we would love to get these people. And we certainly always had, people in mind. But we were always very, very happy with what we got in the end. Colette always nailed it, regardless of what we thought we wanted at the beginning.
That's amazing. And when I watch Be Cool, I honestly can't picture anyone else doing the voices in some ways, when it's like, even with, we all say that we've got our ideal actors to voice the main five, but then with like the secondary actors, they all just fit so perfectly. And I was wondering, so there's an era where Scooby-Doo movies were based on the shows. So there was a What's New Scooby-Doo style movie that was partly based on like a pup named Scooby-Doo. And recently we've had the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, where we saw the conclusion in a movie. If you were asked to write for a Be Cool Scooby-Doo kind of movie, would you be interested? And what do you think you'd do with it?
Oh, sure. I had so much fun writing those characters. You really do. If you get it right, I think the characters start talking to themselves. And that was always so much fun for me personally writing this show. Just to get them start to talk in the van to each other and bouncing off each other. They really began dictating to me what they would say. I was just sort of, channeling them talking to each other. They took over. And I think that's always a good sign if you're sort of lost in that sort of thing with the characters. And so the opportunity to go back and visit my friends, who I spent so much time with in their heads, I would love it. Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be a lot of fun. I don't know what we would do with a Be Cool Scooby-Doo movie, but I'm sure it would be very strange.
I would absolutely love to see that, or even another series. It's weird because I feel like Be Cool is the type of show that could have gone for ages, because like you said, it kind of followed up from Mystery Incorporated, which kind of was very story based to the point where once the last episode aired of that, you almost got the impression of obviously it could go on a bit more, but they told what they needed to tell. There's kind of a nice closed book, and with this I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to get like so many more series of this because it's just such a good time.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, Mystery Incorporated, it's that show and then our show right next to it. When they came out, they really were sort of two sides of the same coin in the currency of taking big risks with an established property. But Be Cool was really in a lot of ways the opposite of Mr. Incorporated that way. It was, Mr. Incorporated was a serial show where you had to watch the whole thing to go all the way through it. Ours was a reset show, and so we really could have gone on, particularly because in the second season we started doing like, let's throw them in ancient Greece, let's open this up. What else can we do? I was really excited when we did the Scrooge episode. I love this idea of going into classic horror literature, Bram Stoker's Dracula and Frankenstein and A Christmas Carol, and taking those ghosts and monsters from classic horror things and ruining all that literature. So the ghosts aren't real in Scrooge, so he doesn't change, so he continues to be a jerk the rest of his life, and no one benefits and Tiny Tim dies. I mean, to us, that was hysterical. We love the idea of just rampaging through all of literature, making all these famous, beloved ghosts and monsters greedy people in masks. I was so excited to do that for a third season, more of that and stuff like that. So yeah, we could have gone on and had a lot of fun. And doubtful they'll go back to that sort of thing, but it's fun to think about.
Yeah, I guess anything is possible within the realm of Scooby, and I guess thinking more about where Scooby is at today, they recently did this kind of reunion special. It was a bit hokey, but it was on the CW, and I think a lot of the community was so almost disappointed by how that turned out, how a lot of the people that they had talking there were kind of not really engaged. I think it was a very, very poorly received special. And I wanted to ask you this because I know how amazing you are in the community, how kind you've been to come onto this show, and how vocal you are throughout the Scooby community in general. And I think the consensus with a lot of people is that you would have been a perfect guest to appear on a reunion like that, and that would have made it a lot better. So I wanted to ask if you were ever approached to have any part in that reunion special.
No, and I don't think I would have been. Be Cool Scooby Doo I don't think it's such an outlier. It's such its own thing that we're talking about 50, 60 years of a property, that 2 years of it was this one particular show that was introduced to the public in a very sporadic way, so a lot of people didn't even know it existed, and people are still, I still see tweets and stuff like that people send to me of like, what is this abomination, and someone just discovering the artwork and seeing, I'm like, oh, here we go again. So I don't think it moved the needle enough to make someone who has a limited time to do a special about the whole history of Scooby-Doo, to devote any time to Be Cool seems highly unlikely to me.
Mm-hmm. But like you mentioned, with the kind of new people still being kind of put off by the art style, there are still a lot of people that are just discovering the show and that absolutely love it. So what would you say to the people that continue to love Be Cool Scooby Doo and likely will for years to come?
Yes, and thank you. I appreciate you bringing up the flip side, which is also very true, is that there are still a lot of people who are saying, "Oh my God, I just discovered Be Cool Scooby Doo. It's so fun. I love that show." So there is a bit of that, and I would say to them, you have remarkable taste in television. And you smell nice.
That's amazing.
I like your hat. I would compliment them.
That's amazing. And I think if you were to look at the show in hindsight, is there anything that you wish you'd had the opportunity to do, or anything you wish you'd had the opportunity to change? I know you were saying that you were enjoying going to visit some iconic ghosts of history. Is there one that stands out to you that you wish you'd had a chance to go and visit, or anything like that?
I don't know, proud is the right word. Again, I still think that the solution of giving them all those personalities was a good one and the right one. And so, if only for that idea, I think the show's valuable. In terms of regrets, like I said, I would have loved to have done some more literature parody ones, and we got away with murder on that show. We did so many crazy things. We had so much fun, and they really let us. They knew what we were doing. You talked about the callbacks to the original artwork we had in the show. Sort of mocking the fan reaction to the horror of our designs. But it was very much Michael Jelnick, who was the associate producer on the show. He did, Teen Titans Go, which gets the same amount of hate and everyone freaking out because it's, and they love to just lean into the stuff people hate and try to drive them crazy and make them hate, And so there was a little bit of that was infectious, where we're just sort of like, yeah, come on. It's in the end, as much as we cared and as hard as we worked, just freaking Scooby-Doo cartoon. The outrage really isn't needed, ironically, most of those people, I've heard probably the biggest, comment I've heard about the show, the most common one is I was one of those people who absolutely detested the designs and was absolutely turned off and did not want to watch it. But then I ended up watching it, and now I love it, and I don't even see the designs anymore, or at least don't see them as a problem, So in the end, that's, hopefully, more and more people will continue to discover it. It's still a show that has legs in that way. It's out there now. Anyone could watch it, and if it inspires someone to pick up a pen or even just makes them tears them up, during a pen, then that's what it's for. I'm glad it's out there.
It is amazing. It really is. And I guess moving on now to after Be Cool Scooby Doo. So you started to work on the Lego City Adventures. How did writing for that show differ from Scooby Doo?
In the end final result, probably not that different. I know I've been just enormously fortunate in my career that Dan Povenmire had seen this very, very ridiculous stage show comedy I had written, and said, that's the voice. That's the comedy tone I want in Phineas and Ferb. And so he hired me onto that and said, don't change anything, write like you. That's what I want. I want that voice in here too. So I was like, cool, all right. And so it was always pretty easy for me in that respect, that I was just writing like me. And then Zach was doing Scooby-Doo and said, oh, let's get Jon because of what he did on Fit, like just me again. Okay. So and then the Lego thing really was the same thing. This great producer, Andrew Pierce, who was working with Axis, an animation studio in Scotland, he contacted me and said, he and his whole family would watch Be Cool Scooby Doo, and they would all laugh equally. And they had a shot at pitching a Lego show to Lego, and they said, this is the voice. We want that sort of style for it. How would you do this Lego show? And that ended up becoming Lego City Adventures. So again, it was just another really, really lucky thing that, particularly with Be Cool Scooby Doo, somebody saw it and adored it and loved it and wanted, more of that, So I would say, in the end, the sensibility is very similar. It was written very differently. I had a bunch of improv actors and writers on the Lego show because there were so many characters that, we needed different ideas for firemen and policemen and all these different, personality types. And that's what improv people do. They get up on stage, I need a profession, fireman, and they, on the spot, I have to come up with all this sort of stuff and create stories. And I wanted that sort of kinetic energy of creativity and ideas to sift through. So in that respect, it was very different. But the final result, hopefully, was something that's, in keeping with the sensibility and the silliness that I always like to see, at least in my comedy animation stuff.
I think it's time to watch that now. Didn't know you worked on it, so gotta go turn that on.
It's fun. I gotta say, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited now. But of course, we have to ask future projects for you in the pipeline. What you got coming up?
Oh yeah. I can't really discuss too much stuff,
Right.
but yes, there's going to be some really, really fun, cool stuff coming up soon. I'll make sure I let all you guys know.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. We're going to be keeping an eye out, and I guess just for everyone listening, do you have any type of social media that you want to shout out, or anywhere that people can keep up to date with what you're doing?
I tend to not like the idea of seeming or being sort of, an aloof person who, I'm a fan myself of lots of stuff, and so to me, it's like we're all just people talking about stuff, and it's all, I'm very approachable and reachable on social media. It's Jon Colton Barry, sort of one word, no H in my name, in all of the major platforms, pretty much. You can find me, and it's no big deal.
That's amazing. Thank you. And we do look forward to seeing what those future projects are. Like we said, Phineas and Ferb, Be Cool, all things that we've enjoyed watching so much, and it'll be great to see that level of comedy continue. So we're really looking forward to that. So thank you to everyone for listening. Any links to social medias and things will be in the description below, and of course we'll try and make sure we're sharing updates of future projects and things as well. So yeah, thank you for listening, and again a huge thank you to Jon Colton Barry for being an incredible guest.
Thank you so much. And also for everyone watching, it has just turned Rhianna's birthday, so if everyone wants to put birthday wishes in the comment section down below, that would be absolutely amazing.
Happy birthday, Rhianna.
Thank you. I'm kicking it off with just a blast because this is a dream.
So I'm so pleased I got to share the beginning of your birthday with you. I'm actually really happy. What's your dog's name? I'm sorry, I really didn't get to.
She's called Tatty.
Tatty. Oh, she's adorable.
Thank you.
I hope you have a really happy birthday. Very nice meeting you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
That
so
really means
much.
a lot.
Thank you
Ash,
to everyone
really good
watching
meeting
this.
you. Oh,
Goodbye. Sorry. I guess, please
Thank
like,
you.
comment, subscribe. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you so much again,
Thanks, everyone.
Jon Colton Barry. Thank you so much.